students of Reddit, have you ever lost your temper with a teacher? What's your story? When I was in high school we had this small angry teacher that played rugby, or at least tried to, that was always belittling students to feel better about himself. One day we had physical ed and our teacher couldn't come, so the little and always moody teacher that played rugby came to replace her. Little teacher was trying to show off his skills at rugby and making our class play some game where we had to tackle who had the ball. We didn't tackle hard enough, so the little guy joined to tackle some students and show off his grandness. He was having fun being unstoppable and yelling at us if that was all we could do. I was kinda mad, so I just went running at full speed at him. Little teacher got tackled and hit the ground so hard. That was something our class laughed about all year. He used to despise and treat us like he was reaffirming his manliness, though he had some good points too and was kinda crazy. It didn't seem like a student-teacher relationship, so it wasn't that boring most of the time. I guess that's the reason why most of us still remember that little moody teacher. My 8th grade math teacher. She was the absolute worst and ruined any appreciation I had for mathematics forever. She'd purposely skip chapters and mark correct answers wrong if you wrote numbers a certain way. For example, you never put that little dash at the top of your number 7s or your answer was wrong. Also pop quizzes. She had this rule where a pop quiz could cover any material out of the book even if it was something we hadn't gone over yet. And it's not like we could take the book home to study. It was one of those classes where the textbook had to be left in the classroom. I just quit doing any work for her after that. It royally peed her off. Obligatory not me. When I was in high school, a girl absolutely lost her crap on my math teacher. The way class generally went was we'd go in and he'd have the day's assignment written on the board. Then he'd spend the first 20 minutes of class teaching new concepts and going over problems. Then he'd give us about 30 minutes to work on our assignments and he'd sit at his desk and answer questions. Overall, I really liked this style, but some did not. This girl did not. About 3/4 of the way through the year, she snapped. The class was no different than any other. He explained the new stuff and did some examples and then said anyone who needs individual help just line up at my desk and I'll be happy to help. She freaking lost it. What do you mean that's it? I don't wanna wait in line for 20 minutes. Help me now. This is freaking balls, frick you. She was getting angrier and angrier, and to my teacher's credit, the angrier she got, the calmer and quieter my teacher got, and the calmer and quieter he was, the more furious she would get. Teacher, calm. I understand you're upset. How about we go to the hallway and talk about it? Student, yelling. No, freaking help me with this crap here and now. Teacher, calmer, quieter than before. Now there's no need for that kind of language. We can discuss this civically. I'm happy help you why way I can. Student, even angrier and louder. Frick you, frick this. I hate this fricking school. Teacher, still very calm. I'm sorry you're so frustrated. What can I do? Student, now screaming as loud as she possibly can. Get fricked, frick this, frick that, frick everything, incoherent screaming and cursing. This is when the principal walked in and took the girl out of class. The teacher left for a moment to talk to the principal while we could hear this girl screaming all the way to the office. Just every expletive in the book, all directed at the teacher. When it was all over, the teacher calmly walked back in, stood at the front, and said, well, anyone else have a problem with me? I'm happy to discuss it if we can be civil. No one said a word. Okay then. Anyone who needs help come see me. Class went on like normal after that. In retrospect, that teacher handled that crap like a freaking pro in every possible way. Never saw that girl in class or in school again. So something had to have been going on to set her off like that. But I've never seen a student go off like that before or since, and I've worked as a teacher and sub for nearly a decade. Something had to be going on with that girl, but I have no backstory. I don't know if she was struggling with grades or with that class, or if that teacher said or did something to set her off I don't know about. I just know what I saw in class. I'm certain something was going on with that girl to set her off, though, either at home or school. I just think that math class was her last straw for whatever reason. Mad respect for the teacher. I've never met someone who could handle the situation so good. I had a teacher at private college that enjoyed calling everybody stupid and that we were only studying there because our parents showed how much they earned. There were a lot of scholarship students, myself included, but who cares? I can't be quiet when I hear these kind of things, so we discussed almost every class. She failed most of the class on the first course, we fought with the dean and she let us do another test, with another teacher. Everybody passed. On the second course she gave us. Same thing. But this time the dean said we were being dramatic. The teacher decided that there would not be a test, only a group presentation. She settled the groups. I got stuck with two lazy guys who did nothing. I did the entire paper and the presentation. Both of them got a 9A, and I got a 7C-. It was the last time I did a paperwork with the names of the people who did nothing, no matter who they were. I needed a C to pass. Failed because of a point. I tried to talk to the dean. She didn't listen to me, so I had to do the course again. I could do it with another teacher, but I chose her. I was the worst student she ever had. I sat in the first row, always made a fool of her. Once I made her cry. The next year she wasn't a teacher there anymore. She made me lose my scholarship because of that grade. I do not regret it. Would do it again with an extra bit of cruelty. Kamikazed her career Mayo. When I was in 8th grade, my science teacher decided the day before the last test of the year to give us an extra 16 pages of new material to learn by ourselves and appear in the test. Needless to say, everyone lost their crap and started complaining. I wrote her an angry letter. I was later forced either to apologize or they would tell my parents. I apologized because I may have been a little inappropriate. And by the end of the year she was fired after her first year in the school. She also thought it was a good idea to bring her dogs to part of the lessons in the science lab, when there are 2 kids who are allergic to dogs. Mayo, I had a teacher that thought latex allergies were fake. One day we did an experiment with balloons and a kid said she was allergic to latex and the teacher screamed "No you ain't," then started rubbing her violently with the balloon. She got fired that semester. I flipped my crap on a logic professor who lost my assignments records. You didn't do them. I'm looking at your grades and they are zeros, that's why you have AD. Me. Look you dipshit. I have papers you've graded right here. They aren't even good, but they are not zeros. It was over the phone, but eventually I read through his comments on my papers while he was trying to argue with me. That's when he's like, okay, that doesn't sound made up. Scan your papers and email them in. Went from a D to a B. After months of failing me because I couldn't do the problems his way, which multiple tutors told me was the hardest way of learning and most of his 2 classes were failing, he accused me of cheating on the final exam. It's 2 weeks before I graduate high school. I've been failing because you and the administration have your heads up your asses, and you think I'm gonna cheat on the final fricking exam? Frick you. Not me, but a girl flipped crap on my economics professor cause she kept cancelling class without sending out emails. The girl only had that class on Fridays and drove an hour to get there. It sucked she got caught in traffic, just to get a note next to the classroom saying cancelled. Ugh. My college did the same thing to part-time students. We make special arrangements to leave work earlier on days that we have classes so that we can get through the rush hour traffic in time. And then when we get there we find out the class has been cancelled. I had a history teacher in high school who claimed the following. America caused the Holocaust. Americans did the Pearl Harbor attack just to join the war. JFK was planted by the Soviets. 9/11 was an inside job. I know. Common meme. The icing on the cake was when Chris Kyle was murdered. She says nobody cares about dead soldiers and proceeded to spend an hour covering the life and career of Whitney Houston. I got up and walked out of the room at that point. She left after 1 year there. JFK was planted by the Soviets. He was, actually. Presidents are an unusual species, only able to grow to full size in the frozen soil of Siberia, and need to be well defended to stop their leaves being eaten by deer. Did a math test and on the paper you could only mark your answer. You had to do the calculations on another paper. Long story short, my teacher lost my calculations paper and wouldn't admit it. He said I didn't hand it over, that I cheated and some other crap. So I went to the school supervisor and asked to take the test again and she let me. My teacher asked to look while I did the test. He made another test, harder. I freaking aced it, right on front of him. He hated my guts for the rest of high school and I couldn't care less. Still don't understand why we couldn't do calculations on the main paper. There was a high school English teacher, Ms. Blades, who was ignoring me for a while. It's worth mentioning that she didn't really like me for some reason. I wasn't a bad or annoying kid. In fact, I was very non-confrontational and mostly kept to myself in and out of class, so I don't know what that was about. Anyway, I had my hand up because I had to use the bathroom and she kept pacing about the room, answering other kids' questions, but would glance at me and immediately look away. After about 5 minutes with my hand up and getting ignored, and about to crap my pants, I whistled as loud as I could. Interrupting anyone was completely out of character for me. Well, once upon a time, I had chipped one of my front teeth, so I could whistle extremely loud because of it. My whistle was just that. It was the whistling equivalent of firing a gun in a closed room. Absolutely deafening. The entire room got quiet and she snapped her head around so fast. As her name might suggest, Ms. Blades was staring daggers into my face. Then one kid goes, "Ooh, he just called you a dog." Ooh. Then she gained serious momentum from that one off and said, "Oh, I don't think so. You think I'm a dog? You think I'm a dog?" I got sent to the principal's office for disrespecting an ignorant teacher. I used the bathroom on the way there, so there have been a lot of assumptions about Ms. Blades. LOL. I just wanted to say that I can totally vouch for her competence as a teacher, and she was often quite fun and energetic, but she did have one heck of an attitude if you didn't follow her rules. I know a chap who once lost it in a lesson and threw a chair at the teacher. Some years, like 15 or so back, and the two are now good friends. Essentially, a discussion had turned into an argument, holding up the rest of the lesson, with the chap basically being awkward and pedantic, not letting it go, getting unduly steamed up himself and apparently not realizing that everyone was getting pretty tired. The teacher made some snide remark and the chap flipped, threw a chair and walked out. He waited outside though cooling off, and afterward the teacher went outside as well. Said something to the effect of, "I think we both ought to apologize for what just happened," and so they did, and all was well. In high school I answered every question on an Algebra 2 exam correctly, but got a 90%. I went through the test and there was not a single marking of a wrong answer, so I asked the teacher why I had lost 10%, and he told me that because I used pen, there was 10% taken off. I lost it. I must have spent 5 minutes trying to tell him how a test should be solely about my ability to demonstrate my understanding of the material, which I clearly grasped very well, and his final argument was that in college I would never get away with taking a test in pen. 2 years later I came back with my Calculus 3 exam, which I had taken in pen, and let him take a look at my fat 100%. I was a section leader in marching band. I was a junior, and my section was 6 freshmen. We were having trouble getting a formation. These kids had never marched before, and I kept taking to help them keep track. The director was a huge dong about it, making the entire band redo it because I was taking. He called me out, and I argued back. I told him I was doing my job as section leader, trying to make sure that my section was in line because it was tricky. He flipped his crap. I flipped my crap back and it ended with him telling me to just go home in the middle of the day. So I went to the office and told my guidance counselor what was happening and that I wanted to drop marching band. He got in a lot of trouble, specifically for telling me to leave campus. It turned into a whole thing. My parents and I came in for a meeting with him and the vice principal. In the end, dude almost got fired and had to go to a seminar on how to communicate better. The other band director, who taught non-marching bands, talked me into staying in marching band. I feel bad for all the fellow band kids who have bad directors. In 5th grade I had a teacher who disliked me because I was bullied a lot and she had to take off it and talk to my parents a lot. One day I was playing kickball and got borderline assaulted by some kids and she came over, then let them go inside. She looked at her dirt-covered me and said, "Don't go telling your dad about this." Next day dad went into school and had a very long talk with this teacher and the principal. I'm pretty sure she was hoping the school year would end sooner. For real though, if my kid ever tells me a teacher said don't tell your parent about this, you can bet that teacher is losing their job or some freaking teeth. Bullying is a real freaking issue. Frick that teacher. My mother and father passed when I was in my final year of school. I was off school for a while around the time of the second funeral. When I returned to school, my tutor decided it was her job to tell the class what had happened with me, right there in front of everyone, instead of letting me do it on my own terms. To say I lost my temper would be an understatement. Whoa. Not just at a teacher, but at an entire department. The English department at my first college was staffed by people who, by and large, were buttholes. Their idea of a writing workshop was having you email the assignment to the teacher, and then making you pay at least $10 to print out enough copies of your story for the entire class. Why we couldn't just put it up on a message board somewhere? They were built into our school's online infrastructure. I don't freaking know. The teacher of this workshop also made it abundantly clear that he didn't give a flying frick about his students. I'm pretty sure he was a grad student teaching the class for credit, but he acted like a major douche, and pretty clearly didn't read any of the stories beyond a basic skimming. We took quizzes on computers, and he didn't give a frick if we googled the answers, as long as we got it done before class ended. He drove one of his students to a panic attack on the last day because he had acted like such a creep to them, micromanaging one of their stories. It was bizarre. They also had this weird thing where they would gather every English major in the college into the chapel on campus every Thursday in order to have you listen to someone read from their work. It was advertised as creative writing common time, but it literally just meant sit down, shut up, listen to someone read their works that were rejected from a lit magazine. No laptops, no phones, no books, and if you missed one session of this, out of an entire semester, you failed the class, and you had to take 4 semesters of this if you wanted to pass. By the end of the first semester, I'd had enough. I'd missed a session, and the makeup assignment was just as bizarre. You had to find an audio recording of a work online, read by the author and analyze how they read it. Like, what? It really got bad on the last day. Undergrad students were finally allowed to read, and either they didn't vet them at all, or they vetted them really poorly, because there was a student who read a graphic depiction of a debauchery and murder, and the teachers just let them. A few of the other students in the building left in disgust. I almost joined them. Needless to say, I dropped out of the English program at this college and transferred to a university whose English department isn't staffed by psychopaths. Took me an extra year to graduate. Don't care. It was better than that. Holy crap. That sounds insane. Wonder how many complaints there were. I flipped on several teachers, but this one still bugs me. One of my best friends in high school had died in a car accident, and a couple days later my friends and I told my teacher we would not be able to make it to class because of the viewing. She then proceeded to tell us that we need to plan our days better and how irresponsible it was of us. I've never felt so much rage. Screw you, Mrs. Weaver. That is an unacceptable response from her. You must really be out of your mind to say something like that. I was a senior in college taking a chemistry class because it wasn't required for my major until the end. Mind you, I'm an engineering student, so this freshman chem class is going to be a joke. The last problem on test 3 was mathematically ambiguous. I walked up to her in the test and told her that, and she told me you'll get it right. Fast forward a couple of weeks and she counted me off 10 points for it. So, I ran it past a few friends and I went to her office and I very calmly laid out my reasoning and a quick proof for why it was mathematically ambiguous. I was right. She said I was right, but she refused to give me the points back because that would mean that she was wrong and I was right. She took the stance of I have a PhD and you're an undergrad. Much cursing and anger later and I was kicked out of her office. I had a Spanish teacher, and in order to gain other students' sympathy, she would make fun of one of the students, and kind of bully, not that badly but well, that student for this hour of class. Of course, other students would sometimes laugh because class was super boring, so it was like a show. I hated that. Of course she would pick the students that didn't reply back to her provocation, the low profile type, and of course she would use the perfect excuse just after being mean. No, it's just a joke, hee hee. Once that guy that never searched trouble to anyone was her victim of the day. She takes him as an example to describe a homeless guy on a picture. After only 10 freaking long minutes, he stands up and leaves the classroom crying. And when she stops him before he leaves, He tells her his dad died the previous night and push her away. Once the door closed behind him, she paused for a second and take a crying voice to repeat what he had just said. My dad just died, Crickery, poor baby. Before I realized it, she received my Spanish book in the face, and I called her an ugly SEMI insult level isn't great in Spanish. Appropriate response. Frick this kind of bully teacher. I had one like that. I filmed her once and showed the video to the principal. I got detention for using my phone. She got fired a month later. A couple of weeks into my senior year of high school, the president gave a speech about the importance of school or something. I don't know. I wasn't really paying attention. Anyway, all of the teachers in my school had to set up their projectors so we could watch it. My math teacher couldn't figure out how to get her projector working. So, me being the nerdy kid, I offered to help. She had a fit, started screaming about how she wasn't stupid and how I needed to just sit down and shut up. After a few more minutes of her failing to fix it, she pointed at me and ordered me to fix it. I said, fix it yourself. She told the whole class to go next door to watch the speech in that teacher's room. When we got up to leave, she pulled me to the side and told me that when the class got back I was going to stand up and apologize for being so rude to her. I refused and went to join the rest of the class. She spent the rest of the year making my life miserable. She told me on several occasions that she was going to make sure that I failed her class. Sure enough, I failed her class. Only class I ever failed. Why I didn't report it? I did. My parents went to the administrators, but they didn't want to do anything and said it was an issue for the math department head. The department head was a good friend of my teacher and took her side. The class wasn't a requirement for graduation, and it was the last semester before I was done with high school, so I didn't care to waste any more time on it. How she can fail me at math since the answers are either right or wrong. I would turn in homework assignments and she wouldn't get them. Students weren't allowed to keep a copy of the tests because the school was worried about test compromises, so she could basically give me whatever she wanted on them and I couldn't prove anything. If there was a dispute about the test grades, the school's policy was to have the department head regrade the test. But as I mentioned, the department head was a friend of hers and found that all of the tests that I disputed were graded correctly. Whether or not that was true I don't know since I never got to see them. What a dong of a teacher. This might not seem like much of a temper, but overall I was a quiet, respectful and non-confrontational student. On that day in 10th grade history, the students kept losing handouts and asking for extra copies from the teacher, and he was clearly sick of it. I had never asked for extras before, but someone must have packed up my handouts with theirs at the end of class because I couldn't find mine. I went to ask him for some, super meekly, and apologizing. I knew he wouldn't be happy, but I was a good, non-trouble kid, so I thought such a simple thing would not be a problem, but I was wrong. I got lectured, glared at, yelled at and refused, and I swear I must have been the last straw for him with how much he overreacted. I stared at him as coldly as I could and said calmly but with some serious venom, thanks for nothing, and turned around and strode off. He shouted after me, seriously incredulous that I dared to speak to him so, but I didn't turn or stop. Dang, that felt good as a shy 14-year-old girl. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.